It's uncalled for on that side. We have to be better on the sidelines. Here's the guy, but their sideline overreacts, and it turns into a melee. Overreacted, pushed our guy, dragging our guy to the sideline. So
if there's been a sticking point for the NFL recently, it's the fact that they're doing everything they can to protect its players. Well, primarily they're doing everything they can to protect their quarterbacks and to make football a significantly safer game, which is very difficult when you consider the fact that this is the most physical sport in the world. Each and every play revolves around players tackling one another or forcing each other out of bounds, and sometimes things go a little bit too far. This isn't the early 2000s where you're watching players get jacked up, and this is actually a much more difficult situation to commentate on than you think. So before we get to the content, guys, we are less than 20,000 subscribers away from getting to 1 million subscribers on this channel. So just check to see if you're subscribed and turn on our notifications to help us get there. And now that we get all that out of the way, work! We had so much success on Thanksgiving with the Prize Picks free square. If you follow me on Instagram, then you would have seen my pick of Tyreek Hill, Jonnu Smith, and David Montgomery, which hit for a 5x return. Our square of Josh Jacobs and Devon Achane also converted, and my favorite part about this is getting DMs like this. One of my followers made $225 out of my picks on Thanksgiving, and I got many more DMs of you guys hitting with my picks as well. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, click on my link in the description or use my promo code Mikerophone to get $50 when you make an entry of $5 or more. We're going to be making picks for the rest of the season for the NBA and NFL, and I give away my picks for free on Instagram and Snapchat. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Azeez Al-Shaair has always been an average linebacker, but reuniting with his former defensive coordinator, D'Amico Ryans on the Houston Texans, has been nothing but a godsend for him. Al-Shaair has blossomed into one of the better linebackers in the NFL this year, playing a huge role on an up-and-coming Houston Texans defense. But at the same time, Azeez Al-Shaair has a bit of a reputation. You see, this former undrafted linebacker in the 2019 NFL draft has had a history of dirty hits. For example, in a game versus the NFL's golden boy and a player that everyone widely considers to be the greatest football player of all time, he choked Tom Brady. Al-Shaair was a little quiet following this, but I'm assuming that's because he played for the Tennessee Titans, and although he had his best season to date as a member of the Tennessee Titans, which is what got the Houston Texans to offer him a 3-year, $34 million contract, it seems like he really dialed up his intensity. Because in this past year alone, this man hit Caleb Williams late and punched Roschon Johnson in September, then he tackled Tony Pollard late in November, and then his magnum opus of dirtiness came this past weekend. You see, the Jacksonville Jaguars faced off against the Houston Texans in a very exciting matchup. Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud are considered to be future faces of the league, so fans were very excited to see these two go up against each other, but alas, they wouldn't get to see Trevor Lawrence play for very long, because in the middle of the second quarter on 2nd and 7, Trevor Lawrence would attempt to scramble for a first down. Lawrence would then try to slide and would get met by Al-Shaair, who would deliver a gruesome hit on Trevor Lawrence that would send this young man into a fencing response. Now, if you guys watched our videos on Tua Tagovailoa, you would know what a fencing response is, but if you don't, a fencing response is when you suffer trauma to the brain that is so severe that it causes your hands to flex in its position. It signifies that your brain just experienced significant trauma, and as a result, a huge fight broke out, and rightfully so. I mean, if you just take a look at this in slow motion, you could just see, if you freeze frame it right over here, Trevor Lawrence is about to slide, you know, he's still about to slide, and then Al-Shaair decides to go in for the kill shot right about at this point. It's not like Al-Shaair's momentum was starting when he saw Trevor Lawrence was about to slide. It's not like it was a situation where it was way too late, Trevor Lawrence slid, Al-Shaair hit him. Al-Shaair didn't even try to tap him to signify that he was down. It wasn't a situation where his momentum was too far gone. No, Al-Shaair had the conscious decision to hit him, and he did. Now, following the game, his head coach stuck up for him, saying that this was all Trevor Lawrence's fault.
We stand behind Azeez and everything, you know, that came from that. Of course, he unfortunately hit on the quarterback. But it's also, it's twofold, right? I mean, a lot of the quarterbacks in this day and age, they try to take advantage of the rule where they slide late and they try to get an extra yard. And now you're a defender. A lot of onus is on the defender, right? Whether it's on the sideline or where it's on the quarterback, you don't know what a guy's thinking. You don't know if a guy's staying up and he's continuing to run. You don't know. And then you get a late slide and you hit the guy. Unfortunate that Trevor got hurt. Hope Trevor is okay, but it's also, if we're sliding, we have to get down. If we're getting out of bounds, we get out of bounds. And that rule is there to protect the quarterbacks. And we want our quarterbacks to be safe in the league. So we just have to be safe. If we're sliding, make sure we're keeping our heads down. So
look, man, I understand that as a head coach, you want to make sure you don't lose your locker room. So you want to defend your players as much as possible. At the same time, it doesn't hurt to say that you're just going to talk to that player, because coming out and victim blaming the guy who literally took a forearm to his helmet that resulted in significant brain trauma is just a wild stance to take for D'Amico Ryans. At the same time, I do understand the perspective of quarterbacks being overprotected. Look, I want to say that the hit on Trevor Lawrence is absolutely unacceptable. There's no place for it in the NFL, especially if we want to see these quarterbacks have long careers, and especially considering the fact that the NFL builds its brand on the backs of quarterbacks. So protecting Patrick Mahomes so he can play football to the age of 43 is clearly going to be in the NFL's best interest. At the same time, they need to be realistic about the expectations that they have for the defense, because at the same time, you have quarterbacks manipulating the fact that they're so protected into cheating the game out of a few extra yards. I think the most famous example of this is actually a college football play. About 2 years ago, Kenny Pickett completely changed the landscape of a scrambling quarterback when he was in college, taking off for a significant amount of yards, looking like he's about to slide, but continues going and ends up scoring a touchdown. So if you take a look at this play, there's two ways you can look at it. One is it's a great juke move that results in a touchdown, but at the same time, you have to look at this from the lens of a defense. What are you supposed to do when a quarterback is about to slide? If you're not supposed to touch him and you're supposed to let him go free, it's tough because you're trying to protect the quarterback, but if the quarterback is manipulating those protections around him to score touchdowns, then obviously we have a problem here. Now, fortunately, this isn't a play that we see in the NFL very much to this scale, but there are times where a quarterback looks like he's about to step out of bounds, but he might pick up an extra 4 or 5 yards or tiptoe down the sideline. Another good example of this could be when Lamar Jackson is scrambling right over here. It's a huge play, it's 3rd and 1, and Jeremy Chin meets him out of bounds and hits Lamar Jackson very hard. So much so that the Ravens are about to go to war for Lamar Jackson. But in this particular case, Jeremy Chin wasn't penalized. There was no flag on the play, there was no suspension, nothing of that sort. Of course, Lamar Jackson didn't try to cheat on the sideline either, but in this particular case, I guess you can make an argument that Jeremy Chin didn't get flagged and didn't get penalized or suspended because it was on a 3rd and 1 at the end of the game. So obviously you might need to hit the quarterback a little bit to push him back and preserve the game. This is just one of those rules that are very ambiguous here. I think that's the problem here. I mean, Tom Brady himself mentions how quarterbacks might need to be doing a better job protecting themselves.
The NFL has obviously done a lot of things to protect players and player health and safety. It's been on and on and on. Defensive players have to be aggressive. That's their nature. I always try to be aggressive on offense, and at the same time, the defense tries to tackle aggressively. So there's an aspect to me that I think the quarterbacks need to take better care of themselves.
So the NFL then decided to come out and punish Azeez Al-Shaair for his hit. So this is via Adam Schefter, who cites John Runyon issuing a suspension and writing in a letter that during your game against the Jacksonville Jaguars on December 1st, with 4:20 remaining in the second quarter, you were involved in a play that the league considers unacceptable and a serious violation of playing rules. Video shows you striking the head/neck area of Trevor Lawrence after he clearly goes down in a feet-first slide. You led with your forearm and helmet and delivered a forceful blow to the head-neck area of your opponent when you had time and space to avoid such contact. After the illegal hit, you proceeded to engage in a brawl, which you escalated when you pulled an opponent down to the ground by his face mask. After the referee announced that you were disqualified for the hit and your unsportsmanlike acts, you removed your helmet and re-engaged with your opponent while walking down and across the field, which started another physical confrontation near the end zone. Your lack of sportsmanship and respect for the game of football and all those who play, coach, and enjoy watching it is troubling and does not reflect the core values of the NFL. Your continued disregard for NFL playing rules puts the health and safety of both you and your opponents in jeopardy and will not be tolerated. And as a result of this, the NFL said that they were suspending Azeez Al-Shaair for 3 games. Now, the reactions to this punishment are very mixed. On one hand, some people are saying that the NFL got it right. NFL legend Joe Thomas said it himself. This hit was malicious and has no place in our game. But he also brings up a significantly bigger problem. The NFL needs to get the weaponized quarterback slide out of the game. As dangerous as hits on a quarterback are when the quarterback chooses to slide, we need to stop allowing quarterbacks to fake slide or late slide in order to gain yardage and confuse the defenders on if the quarterback is sliding or not. It would go a long way towards taking those terrible hits out of the game and making things more safe for the quarterback and for the defender. A late slide, fake slide, or acting like you're going to go out of bounds and then skirting forward for a few more yards. These all need to be 15-yard penalties against the offense. And it's about time the NFL referee started marking the ball down immediately when the quarterback starts to slide, which is the rule, by the way. If this happens, the big hits on quarterbacks when they're sliding will be completely eliminated from the game, which is what we all want, right? Which is a very fair take because clearly this is skewed in favor of the quarterbacks, and it makes playing defense significantly more difficult. But at the same time, Houston Texans general manager Nick Caserio is very angry with the NFL for the punishment, and it's not because he doesn't believe Al-Shaair doesn't deserve it. Watch.
Quite frankly, it's unfair. That's all teams ask for is consistency from the league, and I'd say in this situation, I mean, quite frankly, there's no consistency at all relative to the level of discipline that's been handed down. And for the league to make some of the commentary that they made about lack of sportsmanship, lack of coachability, lack of paying attention to the rules, quite frankly, it's embarrassing. And they're talking about a player who's never been suspended, never been ejected. So now we're saying that he's going to be suspended for 3 games? Look, it is what it is. I think the big thing from our standpoint, and all teams want this, is just some level of consistency. I think what we take umbrage is just the picture that's been painted about Azeez, his intentions, who he is as a person. I mean, quite frankly, it's bullshit.
Nick Caserio is upset about the inconsistency that the NFL is ruling these situations. Brian Branch was ejected versus Green Bay, but played the very next week. Derwin James was ejected and received just a 1-game suspension. Kareem Jackson last year was ejected and fined multiple times before finally being suspended. But Azeez Al-Shaair, who had no prior suspensions, was handed a 3-game suspension. And this is an issue that we've always had with the NFL. It just seems like Roger Goodell goes based off of how he's feeling that day. The NFL is basing this on Al-Shaair's history, but he was never suspended for those incidents. It's not like Al-Shaair really has a reputation of being a very dirty player, but I guess at the same time, when you have this many incidents in a span of 3 months, then the NFL is going to have to step in. Al-Shaair also got away with a lot throughout this year, so that could also be a counter argument. But I do think Nick Caserio is more upset about the fact that CJ Stroud has been a victim of dirty hits throughout his career, and at the same time, there was no punishment for these dirty hits. I mean, one of these late hits even resulted in Stroud getting concussed, so he had to miss the rest of the game. It was against the league's best defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams, so I can understand if you're Nick Caserio, you'll be very upset at the double standard that the NFL has. At the end of the day, I don't think you have to choose a side. I think both sides make a lot of sense here. On one hand, quarterbacks should not be allowed to weaponize the slide in order to get extra yardage, but that's not what happened here. In this particular instance, Azeez Al-Shaair had the opportunity to slow down, and you could even see it when he goes for the tackle, but he decided to not only tackle Trevor Lawrence, but very brutally tackle Trevor Lawrence and knock him out of the game. Now, at the same time, if you want to take it a step further, this is a borderline bounty gate-like philosophy, but could it have been that he made that hit on purpose so Trevor Lawrence could get knocked out for the rest of the game and Mac Jones could be the quarterback instead? Because that would be a significantly easier quarterback to go up against if you're the Houston Texans. It's impossible to prove whether or not that is the case. I don't necessarily know. At the end of the day, if we want football to remain a sustainable sport for the younger generation to want to be involved in, and we want it to be a safer game all around, we have to take necessary precautions to make sure everyone's protected, not just quarterbacks. And I do agree with what people are saying here. There is a lot of inconsistency in the way players are punished. There are moments where quarterbacks weaponize slides, and there was no place in the game for Azeez Al-Shaair's tackle here. But let me know in the comment section down below if you disagree with any of this. I'd like to hear what you have to say. I hope we could actually have a respectful conversation about this in the comment section down below. Aside from that, we made a video on Kirk Cousins. His career might be over. I mean, the zip on the footballs that he throws is just completely gone. Maybe it's an overreaction reaction, we have a full video on it. I'll leave it in the end screen for you to check out. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.